Good evening to our audience members in Europe and Israel, and good afternoon to those in North America. I am one of the members of the European Cantors Association Committee and also one of the moderators on our Voice of the Cantor program, of which this is the 5th session. Tonight, our moderator is Russell Grossman. Russell is a graduate of London Jews College, as by the way I am. He's been Chazan at High Holy Days for nearly 40 years, the last 13 at Binstock Synagogue, the largest shul in Scotland. He's also an accomplished Baal Koreh for over 45 years. Russell presented the program for the recent European Cantors Convention in Hanover in January 2020. In civilian life, Russell is a senior civil servant working for the UK Cabinet Office and is a director at the UK Rail Regulator. He's also a non-executive director at Engage for Success, which promotes a better way for people to engage with work. I'm now pleased to hand over to you, Russell.
Well, good evening, and thank you very much, Hirsch. Thank you very much for that. I hope everyone can hear me. The first thing I'm going to ask is for everybody who is currently unmuted to mute their microphones, because that's the one thing that we know is most disturbing for other people. So if you can all arrange, please, to mute your microphones, that will be much appreciated. So Voice of the Cantor itself, as a program, doesn't actually include any singing, but as a series, it does examine the joys and the fears of the Jewish prayer leader across the Jewish world today. In previous sessions, we've examined some challenging subjects and covered topics which have included how the pandemic has potentially reshaped congregational attitudes to services, the challenge of modern orthodoxy for the cantorate, whether online services, where permitted within halacha, are likely to become a permanent feature of synagogue life, and what this means for the role of the cantor, and the issue also of untrained service leaders being given access to the bima. Now, these have been very rich and engaged discussions with some great people, and you can view or listen to all 4 of the previous sessions on our YouTube or our podcast channels. And if you want to do that, you can go to cantors.eu, but obviously not just at the moment. Now, tonight, in the Carlebach Conundrum, we want to examine the issues presented by the type of music used in services in the genre of the late Shlomo Carlebach. We're going to be focusing on the phenomenon of the music, which you might describe as neo-Hasidic or easy singing music. It's often regarded as progressive and popular, with short melodies and catchy tunes which are easy to learn, but in many cases it has supplanted traditional nusach. So, leaving aside any viewers to the subjective musical merits of Carlebach's own compositions, we're simply noting that the man started something which others have continued and developed upon. Why did this happen? What was so wrong with the structure of services at that time that it rapidly took root and spawned an array of imitations? What was so lacking in traditional Jewish worship that it was needed at all? Or conversely, was traditional worship actually quite fine, and the introduction of this latter 20th century spirituality less wanted by than forced upon others? So these are questions, some more, all of which we might explore this evening with the eminent panel that we are very grateful to have given of their time today. And collectively, our panel represents different backgrounds, different service approaches, and different experiences, and therefore contrasting outlooks likely on these subjects. But we all believe we will have a valuable contribution to make to this session from all of them. Before turning to the panel, I do want to thank our international audience this evening, gathered from at least 3 continents. We want to understand questions you might have for our panel this evening, and with a large crowd such as this, the most practical way is to ask you to type any questions you have in the chat. Panels actually have been so engrossing that we haven't had time for specific questions at the end. So please do feel you can ask questions as we go along, and I'll try and pick it up. One big ask, though, is please do keep your questions relevant to the subject we're discussing, and don't use the chat to comment on things which we're not talking about, since that can clog up the chat. So to introduce our panel this evening, I will in a second introduce each of them individually and invite them just to say hello and explain them and their congregations. But our panel this evening, in summary, is Cantor Hainovitz from Yeshurun Synagogue in Jerusalem, Rabbi Yossi Binstock from St. John's Wood Synagogue in London, Rabbi Michael Wolk from Temple Israel in Charlotte, North Carolina, Cantor Yehuda Marx from the Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester, United Kingdom, and Alex Klein, the director of the European Cantors Association. And so to start us off in turn, I'm going to introduce each of the panel and ask you panel members to say hello and just tell us a little bit about your congregations. And Cantor Asher, I'm going to come to you first. Cantor Asher Hainovitz is an eminent chazan of many decades standing. He was born in Jerusalem and studied chazanas under Shlomo Zalman Rivlin. He studied at the Jerusalem Rubin Academy of Music and later received his LRSM degree from the Royal Academy of Music of London. After serving as cantor in Bulawayo, in Zimbabwe, Pretoria, and London, in fact, at my own shul, Edgware Yeshurun, he was appointed to the central Yeshurun Synagogue in Jerusalem. He's recorded the entire Yamim HaNorah in Nusach with organ accompaniment by Raymond Goldstein, as well as other recordings, including Yiddish song. Cantor Hainovitz has also been the lead teacher at our ECA cantorial conventions, the latest of which was in January last year, 2020, in Hanover, just before COVID-19 reared up. So Cantor Asher, a little bit about, particularly about the congregation that you have, just in a few minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Thank you. First of all, hello to everybody. There are so many names I want to say personally, hello, but of course I'll say it, hello everybody now. Yes, I started my position in Yeshurun in 1977. Now it's 40 something years ago. And when I arrived there, it was a real Yakish shul. You were not supposed to repeat a word twice. And the good things about the things I found there was that they're very particular and they wanted very much to have communal singing. They didn't want the chazan to perform. They want the chazan to daven and to take in also the members of the shul. It's a semi-communal, I would say. It's not like in Chutz La'aretz, where it's a congregation. It's a semi-congregation. People know each other. We have a kiddush afterwards, and then each one goes on his own. If somebody is not well, I go to visit him in hospital, not because I have to, but because I want to, because I know him and he's my friend. And the difference between Yeshurun and the Chutz La'aretz is here when you have weddings, it's not always the chazan of your shul or the rabbi of the shul. And also Yeshurun never had a rabbi. I was a chazan, and lucky many members were qualified rabbis. And when you needed a sermon, you weren't short or on people to call on. That's in short.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll come back, obviously, to some of the questions with you later on. But the next person I want to introduce is Rabbi Yossi Binstock. Rabbi Yossi was in my son Jamie's class at school, actually. However, only one of those people went on to become a rabbi. Yossi studied at Yeshiva Speish Yisrael for 4 years, following which he received rabbinic ordination. He also has a BA in business administration from Holt International Business School. He's been part of the clergy team at the prestigious St. John's Wood Synagogue in London since 2014. He leads highly acclaimed participatory Shabbos and festival services and is involved with a wide range of teaching within the community. Having trained both in Israel and the UK, Yossi takes pride in maintaining the nusach of the shul as he combines it with a contemporary flavour, leading the shul services. So Yossi, a little bit about that prestigious St. John's Wood shul.
St. John's Wood, first of all, hi everyone. It's a real privilege to be here. A little bit about St. John's Wood. It is one of the biggest United Synagogue shuls based in central London, the first real suburb outside central London. The congregation is traditional, and having been at this shul before I was a member of the team, we had the eminent Moshe Haschel and the Ne'ima singers for many, many years, and that was a beautiful chazan and choir style service. And I'm led to believe that the community hasn't moved on from that, and wanted more of a shorter service, more of a more participatory service. For example, 10 years ago, your Shabbos morning service was 9 till 12. It was a 3-hour slot. 5 years ago, it was 9:15 to 11:45. And post-COVID, it's 9:30 to 11:45. People's attitudes and appetites for a longer service has just decreased. It's what they want, and we're employed to give them what they want. They want a more sing-along style service. People want to come to shul feeling that they have prayed as opposed to listen to prayer. And seeing as many of the congregation aren't fluent in the words necessarily themselves, if they can sing along to the tunes that they know, they really feel like they've gained from coming to shul in a way that they otherwise might not have.
Thanks very much indeed, Yossi. Thank you. Our third panelist this evening is Rabbi Michael Wolk. He is a native of Long Island and received ordination from the Jewish Theological Seminary in the United States. He served as the rabbi of Knesset Israel Congregation in Louisville, Kentucky, and has served as senior rabbi of Temple Israel of Charlotte, North Carolina since 2020. As the son of a cantor, he learned to appreciate the role that music plays in shul and strives to include different musical traditions in the life of his congregation. So, Michael, can I just ask if you would give us a bit of a lowdown on Temple Israel?
Sure. Thank you, Russell, and thank you for asking me to participate in this. It's great to be on with so many people from United Kingdom and from the United States and see some familiar faces here. I'm in kind of a strange position that, as you said, I started my work at Temple Israel in 2020, which is a year that not too many people are going to forget because of the pandemic. So since I started, we have not had what we would call normal synagogue life. For most of the time that I've been here, our services have been exclusively virtual, with congregants participating either by watching on a live stream service or by joining in over Zoom. So my knowledge of what the synagogue was like beforehand is secondhand. I will say that one of the major attractions of coming to Charlotte and coming to Temple Israel for me last year, when I looked at different positions, was the opportunity to work with my incredible colleague, Cantor on the other side of the Bima. And as you pointed out, the music of the synagogue and the choices we make are very important to me. What I appreciate about working with Cantor is that she brings a strong background in traditional nusach, which I think many in the congregation want, but is also constantly introducing us to new music and challenging the congregation to expand what we include in services. As far as the congregation itself, it is about close to 600 families here in Charlotte. We are a conservative synagogue. Some of the debates that we have outside of virtual services and transition back to them, transition back to in-person services, which is in progress right now, are the role of musical instruments, when they can be used, how they can be used, which I know is not a conversation that would happen in the Orthodox congregations represented here. And frankly, about the music that we use. Cantor is fairly new, and I am even newer. So we also work with the legacy that our predecessors left for us, and how we incorporate what they brought to the synagogue together with the unique service aspects that we want to include. So it's still a new position, but I'm very proud of the services that we've done for the past year, and encourage anyone to go on our live stream page and watch them.
Thank you very much, Michael. And I can confirm that Cantor is indeed incredible and is one of my favorite cantors, but I think that's known by quite a few people. The next panelist we have this evening is Cantor Yehuda Marx. Cantor Marx is Chazan at Heaton Park Synagogue in Manchester. Yehuda studied Chazonas at Jews College under the legendary Reverend Leo Brill, and he's author of the 2013 book In Defense of Chazonas, a copy of which I have here and probably will be on sale later. Yehuda's talk on defense of Chazonas actually was one of the highlights of our Cantors Convention in Manchester a decade ago, and again in Prague in 2018. The book is in many ways a manual for Chazonim, and it covers subjects of dikduk, how to connect your prayers to time and place, and how to enhance your position as a Chazan. It also includes interesting chapters on the importance of wearing canonicals and why Chazonim do repeat words. Yehuda, a little bit about your congregation.
First of all, thank you for having me here tonight. It's a really great privilege, and I'd like to thank the ECA for all the wonderful work they do in promoting the sacred service of Chazonos. My shul Heaton Park is a traditional United Synagogue. When I say United Synagogue, I mean the United Synagogue shuls of London of Great Britain. It's modern Orthodox. We have 900 members. We were established in the 1940s, and we've always had a good person, a good voice intoning the services. I'm the 10th Chazan we've had since 1940s. I've been there for over 30 years. 2 of my predecessors were my cousins, and 7 of the 10 Chazanim we've had since its beginning I've personally known. So I feel very strongly connected to my shul. I sing Chazonos every week without fail, and I also do Carlebach because I believe you have to do a mixture of both. And I emphasize that because I'm not just a song leader. A Chazan has to be a prayer leader and lead the congregation in prayer, not just in song. And if you do that and you just do it just by singing one piece of Shabbos morning, that's enough. You don't need to do more than that. And at the same time, do congregational singing. My shul do love congregational singing and have time for Chazonos as well. The thing is, you can find time for both.
Thank you very much, Yehuda. And I think we're going to touch a little bit further on some of those subjects that you've just mentioned in a second or two. Our last panelist is staying with the Manchester connection is Alex Klein, who is in Manchester, but most particularly is the director of the European Cantors Association. Alex has been passionate about Jewish music, especially Chazonos, all his life. And as a youth, he took services in Finchley Synagogue, and he has also studied at Jews College. Alex has brought significant Jewish artists and cantors for concerts to the UK. He was head of the Synagogue music section of the Jewish Music Institute and a founder member of Philharmonic. He gives regular talks on cantorial music internationally and has had his own Sunset radio program. Alex also co-founded the European Cantors Association with Geraldine Orbach in 2012. Alex, perhaps just a word or two about the European Cantors Association.
Well, the European Cantors Association promotes good practice in synagogues, trains young Chazonim into making a difference, progressing. We send our Chazonim to Tel Aviv Cantorial Institute because there is nowhere for Chazonim today to study in the UK. And it's not just the Orthodox, it's right across the board, whether you're progressive or liberal or reform. There is no courses particularly to study. Jackie Chernet does a course for Baltafillas through her EGIL and Masorti organization, but we incorporate everybody and anybody who wants to learn good practice for the future. I mean, ECA is a platform for many different organizations, and we are non-political and non-denominational in the wider sense of the word. So we're not affiliated to any organization, and therefore we don't have to interfere with anything political or any politics. We welcome everybody, male and female alike, from all over the world, even though we are called the European Cantors Association. We've made many, many friends, and we hope, please God, to make more. The idea is to help our youngsters, the future of Chazonos, and put Chazonim back where they actually belong on the Omid in a shul conducting services. That's
Okay.
about it. I think.
That's more than about it, and that's great, Alex. And I just want to publicly commend you for the efforts that you have put in to ensure not just the beginning of, but also the continued and sustained success of the European Cantors Association. And now I want to come to the subject in question, which is the music of the genre started by Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, but absolutely continued through many composers and in many different types of shul over the subsequent decades. The first question I'm going to ask is a simple one, although it might be less simple to answer. What does popular music mean to you and your congregations? And I'm going to ask Cantor Asher, what does popular music mean to you and your congregations? And what are the sort of composers or tunes that would constitute popular music in your view?
There are all different of popular music. For example, in the days of the Sfiras HaOmer, yes, people say, won't you sing Pinchik's Hineni? This is when once a year, twice a year, Tfilas Tal, Rosenblatt, Tfilas Geshem, and so on. But generally speaking, every Shabbat, Kabbalat Shabbat, we do once a month on Shabbat Mevarchin. We do a Carlebach Kabbalat Shabbat. That means from the Chon Ranena until before Bolchu. That's it. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know any other Carlebach services. Maybe there are in some places that they do it on Shacharit, on Musaf, or maybe occasionally bring in a melody here and a melody there, but it doesn't need to be a Carlebach, it can be a Mositz, it can be anything. But I'm talking as a whole structure. This is once a month as, on Kabbalat, on Rosh Chodesh. I did it on Rosh Chodesh so that we don't need to advertise it anymore. People know. Shabbat Mevarchin, we have Carlebach Kabbalat Shabbat. Now let me tell you something about my beginnings of Carlebach. I didn't know what it means. I knew there is a Carlebach, Rabbi Carlebach, I knew his melodies, but I had no idea about Kabbalat Shabbat, etc. And 10 or 15 years after I started in my shul, people came up to me and said, why don't we have a Kabbalat Shabbat, a Carlebach Kabbalat Shabbat? And I said, I have no idea what you are talking about. I don't know what it is. So they said to me, why don't you go down to not far from our shul, and there are a few services there of young people, mainly people who came recently from the United States, and see what it is all about. I said, okay. I went there. I was stunned. First of all, it was beautiful. It was different. But what I saw is people in white. I think 90% of them were drugged. They were singing, they were up in heaven. And they were the hippies. They were the hippies of those days. But slowly, slowly, it came into the general community. And I had to learn the melodies. And we advertised that in this Shabbat, Yeshurun Synagogue will have a Kabbalat Shabbat with Carlebach melodies. I came to shul, I was shocked. The shul was packed more than Kol Nidre night. People came from all over. And then we decided to do it once a month, and we gained a few things. Number one, we gained quite a few new members. People who never came to Yeshurun, they thought this is a shul for the la-di-da, for the high society, etc., etc. And they saw that it's a normal shul, and it appealed to them. So we're getting new members. Number two, people participated. People like to participate. When I go overseas, anywhere in the world, any shul, I hear the melodies, I feel at home. So Carlebach, they say, has got, the melodies have got a lot of pluses and minuses. Of course, like anything else. It depends how you use it. The thing that bothered me was, and I'm sure we'll speak about it soon, the one thing that bothered me is that it may be beautiful, but Nusach will be forgotten in some places. So what I did, I sang the Carlebach melodies and let the people sing and finish it. And then the last 2-3 verses before the thing ends, I would come into the Nusach. That's how you solve that the people will still remember that there is such a thing as Nusach. And I never regretted it. I think that if you use it wisely, like any other thing, you can use things to the positive side or negative side. And if you use it wisely, I think it's a beautiful instrument. Thank you.
Okay, well, that's really interesting, particularly that comment about introducing Nusach on the back of the Carlebach tunes. Yehuda, one of the concerns that we often have about popular tunes is that they do supplant the Nusach. How are you able to deal with something like that at Heaton Park?
Well, I do sing Carlebach, and I love Carlebach tunes. First of all, I'm a great fan of Shlomo Carlebach. I love singing his Piscoli, for instance. It's beautiful to do on Shlosh Golim. I love the classical pieces of Shlomo Carlebach. However, I don't really like the Friday night ones. I think these were composed much later, and I don't think they have much merit. However, I've introduced them in my shul because I want my shul to be in sync with all other shuls in the world, and people now do sing along with them. But the art of singing them is not to sing the same ones week after week. You can sing Shul Hashem, Shechadot. You can take it to Einai from Carlebach and put it to those words as you come with David. Don't just sing the same one week after week. Vary it. Sometimes do his Esoenai, sometimes do his Hashmini Kolech, and that way you'll vary it. It does lose in Nusach, it's true. It does lose in Nusach, but I only sing one Carlebach piece. So the rest of Friday Nusach is a crack Nusach. So I don't think it's a problem by just moving one piece out of the regular Nusach. As long as we come back and most of the service is in the correct Nusach.
And that's how you ensure that the correct Nusach is sung on a Friday night. I can see Alex furiously nodding. So Alex, what's your thought on what Yehuda has just said relating to singing the same piece and the like?
I agree with Yehuda 100% because I switch on every week during the lockdown because I've been stuck at home for the last 12 months and listening to the United Synagogue, one tune, one person, the most boring services I have ever encountered. And I'm sorry to say this, but it's a fact. It doesn't do justice, as Yehuda said, to so many beautiful Carlebach melodies. You switch it on and it's one tune that goes all the way through. They have no consideration for the Nusach. And I also believe you can start with a Nusach and you end with a Nusach. What you do in between, you can do whatever you want as long as you come back to where you began. And that's the whole essence of the understanding of the Nusach for Kabbalat Shabbat, for davening. And it's the same principle if it's Shachrit, Musaf, Shlosh Regalim, Rosh Chodesh, Mavon Chodesh. Start with the Nusach, end with the Nusach. You can improvise and bring in whatever you want, no matter how modern or how old the songs are, and enjoy yourself. If you want Happy Clappy, have Happy Clappy. If you want Zaltzer and Lewandowski, there's no problem. Sing the Blue Book as we used to do at Finchley. We had a choir, but we joined in. The whole congregation became the choir. If you go to Ashershul, he has a fabulous choir, about 600 people, and they're all part of the congregation. So it's all part and parcel. And I have heard and seen what Asher does. I've seen what Yehuda Marx does, and I've heard Michael before. I've heard Sol's davening, and most of the people here, I've heard Yossi's davening, and Yossi has a beautiful, sweet voice. But there's no need to just do this one-dimensional, one song all the way through. As Yehuda says, it's all.
Yossi.
On the topic of the US TV Kabbalat Shabbat, having been asked to perform one of those services, or a couple of them, I was given a brief of what to sing. So we all got pretty much the same brief because that's what they wanted. And what's difficult is when you're singing into a computer screen, songs which are meant to be cheer-led, so to speak. Carlebach is a Carlebach song leader is effectively a cheerleader, someone who is inviting the congregation to sing with them as opposed to singing to the congregation, right? And that's what many of those in the United Synagogue have been used to recently. And it's what head office, who were running the Kabbalat Shabbat from the Central United Synagogue, were asking the Chazanim to do for their program. So if you listen to my St. John's Wood Kabbalat Shabbat, it was far more varied than the one I did for United Synagogue because I got a brief from United Synagogue what they wanted, which is why they all sounded the same, is because they were all given that same brief. Now, going on from Nusach Carlebach to Friday night to Nusach throughout, I think there are fundamental differences between where Nusach is. I mean, the Nusach for Kaddish, right? Your Chatzi Kaddish or your Kaddish Tiskabel, each has their own Nusach, and those are things that aren't going to be messed around with. Your Nusach for the first few brachas of the Amida, first couple, or the end of the Amida, people aren't messing around with it. When people say, is Carlebach supplanting Nusach, they're talking about pretty much Kabbalah Shabbos. They're talking about a few other tunes which are being inserted as opposed to taking away from Carlebach Nusach, taking away from Nusach per se. I had to learn Carlebach's Nusach even for Yom Naraim when I was doubling for Saatchi. Saatchi and St. John's were merged. And I mean, it's very different, Yom Naraim. Even if you take Shabbos morning, he sings all the way from Nishmas, all the way through Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach did. And that's not how most shuls do. And it's not how we're assuming that Carlebach Nusach is supplanting regular Nusach. There are instances, those instances are like Friday night Kabbalah Shabbos, which isn't its own tefillah, it is the preface of Mariv, and for Mariv, most people don't use Carlebach Nusach. So when we say, is Carlebach coming instead of Nusach, what are we talking about exactly? Yes, everyone's had Zoom Kabbalat Shabbat, and many of those have been Carlebach, but yes, that is just Kabbalat Shabbat.
So I can already feel the letters being written to the United Synagogue by Mr. A. Klein here, but I'm not going to ask Alex to come back in that because very interested. Thank you very much for that, Yossi, and I think we might, as I say, we might take some of that offline. But obviously, as you're saying, and as Alex is saying, the canon of even just Carlebach, even before we go on to other composers, is much greater than, if you like, the monotonal that most people might identify in the UK. But I want to go over to the US, Michael. Your services, I listen to a lot of your services because they're archived. I can listen to them after Shabbat. They are very tuneful, and yet they seem to retain the Nusach nevertheless. Just looking at this contrast between introducing popular music but retaining Nusach, which I think at Temple Israel is absolutely achieved. How do you feel that the balance stacks up there?
I think that, first of all, as Yossi pointed out, we're talking mostly about Friday night when we have these discussions, and that there are certain key parts of the service where we want to be very clear that we are going to use traditional Nusach. The Kaddishes are a major section of that. Obviously, Misinai melodies on the high holidays are very important to us to preserve and to continue to use, and to present them in the same aesthetic style that we present newer music. Our Friday night services, I think the discussion is not really between Nusach and melodies or newer melodies. It's between the melodies that were used for the last 30 or so years and the new melodies that are introduced now. I don't think that for most people, Nusach is a meaningful category. It is for me. And in this job, I often have to differentiate between my own personal preferences and my own thoughts about something and thinking about how it's perceived by the congregation. So for example, on a Friday night, we typically include music from Oran Eldor, Deborah Sachs-Mintz, Laurie Akers, to name a few of the composers that Cantor has made really much more well known here. And the pushback from people who don't like newer melodies is not about, are you using the proper Nusach and Kabbalat Shabbat? It's how come you're not using the melodies that were used before that we're familiar with? So if you want to go back to your original question about popular music, in this case, popular music is new music.
Thank you. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. Morris Minsky, Belmont United, saying, I tend to daven with a light blue book by Rabbi Jeffrey Schisler, who I think is on here as well. Yes, he is. There he is. And as well as Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach's tunes. That's my way to keep everyone happy, and in my mind, puts them in a good frame of mind for davening. And thank you for the detailed comments from Robert Cohen relating to denigrating, not in any way discounting or denigrating Nusach or its proper rule, but congregational singing that opens the heart and reaches to Shemayim is prayer. So thank you very much for that. So some really interesting topics that we've kind of opened up, and we've heard the kind of services that you're singing. I want to ask, looking at this general tradition of neo-Hasidic music or popular music, which has been broadly adopted across the whole spectrum of Jewish practice. Michael, why do you think? I mean, you are quite schooled in both Nusach and across chazonos and general popular music. Why do you think that tunes that we're talking about, Carlebach, but also going back to some other tunes which in their day were popular and still today, such as Lewandowski, Sulzer, etc., why do you think that it is that they've been adopted across the spectrum of Jewish practice, from Hasidim all the way through Orthodox, liberal, conservative, etc.?
There's the famous expression, al tam v'areach en lehit v'keach. On taste and smell, you can't argue. But you're right that there are certain melodies that really gain a lot of popularity. For a time, it was the music of Shlomo Carlebach. I think it's a little bit old by this point, and I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that in conservative synagogues, we've shied away from that music in the last few years because of his problematic personality, problematic accusations against him. Certain music appeals to people because it appeals to the time that we live in. Lewandowski was written reflecting the musical standards of his time. He was writing the best synagogue music in a style that would have been familiar, that Jews would have been hearing if they heard general music as well. And I think the same thing goes for what Jews are listening to today. Styles change. We're affected by what happens outside of the synagogue, and we respond to music in the synagogue that sounds like music we hear outside the synagogue.
Thank you. Thank you. Yossi, what would you say to that?
I actually fundamentally agree with that. People aren't going to 6-hour church services anymore. Most concerts aren't the opera, even though there is the opera, and that is reflected in what general people's tastes are when it comes to synagogue style services. I think the fundamental point here is that what Carlebach really brought to the fore is a tune that can be picked up very quickly and very easily by a lot of people. You don't need to have heard the tune before in order to be able to sing along with it. you can just get swept up with its repetitive nature, only probably about 4 chords, and it was created and it encourages communal participation. And it's the communal participation element which has been key for its popularity. It, so to speak, went viral because everyone was singing it. And any tune, not just Carlebach, that everyone knows, I mean, in any particular shul that would be different, but something that Carlebach had that is true for many shuls is that people knew it and people could pick it up easily. And that is why it became popular, because people could sing along. And people want to sing along, and that is why it became popular.
Absolutely, understand. Alex, you have your hand up.
Okay, I take Yossi's point and I take Michael's point, and they're very, very valid points. But I love Carlebach and I enjoyed Carlebach, and I was very, very close to Carlebach. In actual fact, I was his manager in the UK and arranged all his concerts and shows and governings, which at the time was extremely difficult because he was rejected from everywhere that I tried to get him to, except for places like Yakar and Chabad. Without places like that, things would have been difficult, and the independent shuls in Leeds, Liverpool and Manchester. Besides the point, we're talking about there are beautiful melodies and people don't know who composed them. We're very fortunate here to have Cantor Zim here, who has been composing melodies for 40, 50 years, probably. And his books are simple and easy. And you have the thread of the nusach running through them. The manure, it's Hasidic type music. You can do your la la la's, your bim bam bombs, and even if you don't understand the Hebrew, which some people who go to shul can't read or write or understand the Hebrew language, and music like soul composers, and maybe the rabbi's sons, the mojits, the vishnitz, the Chabad tunes, they're all there to bring you onto a higher plane, but without not necessarily knowing. You don't have to know the music. You can la 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 with it. A nigun is music, not necessarily with words. And there are famous nigunim that Chazanim used to sing. But as I reiterate, you can do what you want. You can go and to the highest levels of the Vekas, but as long as you start and you end with a nusach, why throw it away? What for? You do what you want. And as long as people understand what it's about, and the opportunities being here with the lockdown for the 12 months where the people like the United Synagogue and other organizations had the opportunity of teaching new nigunim, new tunes, new songs, about the understanding of prayer, how prayers came from. Why are the services like they are today? Where did they come from? Who wrote this? Who wrote that? Why do we say Shemoneh Esrei 3 times a day? Why do we say Shema in the morning and Shema in the evening? Why not at Mincha? And so on and so forth. All these things. There was wonderful opportunities which synagogues and organizations throughout the world did not embrace. You have a captive audience. Explain what they're doing. People are bored. If they don't know what the hell's going on within a service or anywhere they go, they're bored. I can go to an opera, not understand a word of it, and I'm bored. Somebody explains it to me, I get it, and I understand it, so I can embrace it. And that's been the problem. We have lost out with the generations by not doing what we should have done, what our rabbis, our teachers, our chazanim, whoever's in charge should do this. Where can you find within the United Synagogue pages or their website, somewhere where you can understand what's going on within the services? Can somebody explain to me?
So Alex,
I've not seen it.
so, Alex,
That's
thank you for that. I want to ask Yehuda. Are people bored at Heaton Park? And if they are, how do you make them on board?
Well, I hope they're not bored. It's not for me to say. I hope not, because I've got my back to my congregation, so I don't know. But my services don't drag. So on a Friday night, they're under an hour. And that's in the winter, I sing one piece of Chazonas, I sing L'chol Doidi, and one Carlebach piece, and under an hour, inclusive of Mincha, it is done. It is over. So on Shabbos now, I'm managing to do, we start now, well, it varies. I can do it within 2 hours. We start from Rabbi Shlomo Carlebach, and I've done it. I've got my piece of Chazonas in, I've got my happy clappy piece in, and that's it. I hope they're not bored, but if they are, the Chazan should never be on the Madrega of the congregation. Leib Klan said the Chazan should always be more advanced than the congregation, because praying on their behalf to make music popular and to make it so simple is not praying for them. You've got to be, as I said before, a prayer leader, not just a song leader, but at the same time, you have to know when they should join in, give them a chance to join in, but at the same time, pray for them as well.
Okay, thank you. Alex raises the point, I think, well, that we have an issue perhaps with having lost some of the thread of what prayers are about. And I wonder, in a new environment, and we are going to be in a new environment post-COVID, whether there is a need to train chazonim and prayer leaders in a new way of encouraging a more popular sense of engagement, if you like, with the services. Asher, I'm interested in your thoughts on whether you think that the traditional training for chazanim needs perhaps to shift a little bit to effectively respond to how members of the congregation would find services more engaging in today's society.
Definitely. We see on many עמוד התפילה, דע לפני מי אתה עומד. But we must remember, דע מי עומד מאחוריך. Who's behind you? You are not there to show that your coloratura is beautiful. You have to lead the congregation, and if you don't want them to be bored, take them on board. Make them join, make it interesting, but keep the frame. You cannot bring in melodies anywhere. You can bring a most beautiful melody to Kol Nidrei. It's not acceptable. We have a traditional melody for Kol Nidrei, and that's how it stays. Lechadodi, by all means. Make them sing, make them happy. Make sure that I see Alex Knapp here. He's an expert in those things, and many things I remember what he said, but one thing, stick to if it's major, sing in major key. If it's free gift, don't go to minor. Ahava Rabba is Ahava Rabba. Don't mix up these things. And you have to know when you can be free. Like I say, Lechadodi, there's 1,000 melodies to Lechadodi, and everybody's okay. The problem with the Nusach is not only with people who don't know, but with people who do know. And I'm talking in Israel, but I think it applies to other places. For example, in the yeshivot, they sing on high holidays melodies which shouldn't be sung, not because they are not beautiful, they are extremely beautiful, but because they are not the Nusach and what we call Misinai. Like I said, Kol Nidrei you don't change, and many other parts of our services you don't change. And I'll give you an example. We have, during the high holidays, etc. Somebody wrote a most beautiful melody that caught on. Beautiful, but it's not nusach, and you cannot do it in this place. Now I had a problem. What do? I have to satisfy the people, because before I opened my mouth, somebody there started singing and the whole crowd went with him. I cannot tell them, keep quiet. So I let them do it. And when they're finished, I go back to the original nusach. And that's how you solve cleverly. You cannot fight the crowd. You have to accept. Carlebach, whether you like it or not, he's there to stay. He's there to stay because the people decided that's what we like. And it's going to stay. And the same as we had Mozitz Nigunim and Gerech Hasidim Nigunim, and we have, for example, when we open and close the ark, we have Zulzer and Lewandowski. It's also Nigunim. So it depends how you use it. Use your cup and make sure you know that here you can do it and here you cannot do it.
Thank you. Michael, I want to come back to something you said earlier relating to, you've got tunes that have been going for 30 years and then you're trying to introduce new tunes, people thinking that the 30-year tunes are the traditional ones. To Ash's point about making sure that, if you like, the inalienable is kept inalienable, but equally you go along with making sure that the congregation have what they want. How do you square that circle?
I think as cantors and as rabbis, we often have a conservative streak in us, and that we want to preserve traditions. It's something that's certainly important to me, and it's something that I talk about with my colleague frequently when we plan out services. And that's really one of the wonderful things about having a trained professional cantor, which many synagogues do not have, is having somebody who knows, who can decide what cannot be changed, what needs a Sinai melody, what needs to be a nusach, and what flexibility, where you have some more flexibility. It's each cantor or prayer leader also needs to play to his or her own tastes and talents, and needs to present a service that works for them. Can't sing in somebody else's style. So really is a lot of pressure on the person leading, doing the singing. And I'll point out that that's not me in my congregation. So I don't have to deal with that as often as some of the people on here, but it's you know what is important to you when you get up there. You make sure to present that in the best way possible. At the same time, you know where you're able to sing something that might not be your favorite thing in the world.
Thank you for that. Yossi, do you often find yourself singing something that might not be your favorite, but you think is right for either the congregation or is right from a point of view of maybe being a Sinai melody?
The answer is, do I sing the Sinai melodies? Yes. Do I enjoy them? Yes, as well. So I fundamentally agree with what Asher just said, that there are certain things where you can't just stick in a tune because there is fundamental nusach. And it does grate me when I attend other establishments that have very little idea of what real nusach is, be it on Yom Tov doing Shabbos tunes or lots. There are too many examples to really go with this. But yes, I do feel a strong sense of responsibility to maintain the nusach, be it the 3 different yigdals that are for the different shalosh regalim, and many other shuls, even traditional shuls, don't even know that there is another tune for Yigdal, even for one Yom Tov. So I do feel a responsibility, and I do enjoy it, doing the alternative En Kamocha for Yom Tov and Shema Yisrael for Yom Tov, and many shuls don't do it, and I enjoy doing it. I do also recognize that there are some things that people assume to be nusach, which to my mind, and I've asked the questions, and I don't believe that it is necessarily. For example, is Yossi Rosenblatt's Tal, is that nusach? Well, it's only as old as Yossi Rosenblatt. So some people will tell you, well, that we've been doing that for all these years. But it's only as old as it is. And if you would do Stephen Levy's beautiful rendition, is there a difference? So it depends on where you draw the line as what is nusach. So the Sinai melodies, which go back hundreds of years, obviously, I'm not talking about not doing those. But then again, there are time and places where you can insert a tune once in a while and to encourage communal singing. But communal singing doesn't have to be Carlebach. Communal singing could be Lewandowski's of Nuchayoma. It could be a beautiful, from Kedusha to all over the place. Adon Olam. It could be a Chazona's piece as well, as long as everyone's singing. That's the key element here. But in terms of using nusach, using those Sinai melodies, I do enjoy them. But just one point I want to pick up on from what Alex said is that I have seen throughout the past year, many shuls do Zoom sessions or other interactive topics on tefillah, on maybe the PR wasn't good enough that they didn't reach Manchester, but I took part in some myself, I gave some myself, I went to others of other rabbis or chazonim doing those sessions on tefillah, on nusach, understanding tefillah, etc. And I know the chief rabbi and United Synagogue head office have longer term plans in terms of trying to teach nusach and understanding tefillah to the regular community, because they understand that there are many people and many communities who do not have a chazan anymore. We need to be teaching this on a much more mass scale so that everyone understands there is a Yom Tov tune, there is a Sukkot tune, there is a Pesach Ma'ashev Lashem, there is all those tunes are there and are part of public life, and re-establish them back into the songs and the mouths of the people in the pews.
Well said, thank you. I know so important, and I just want to recognise at this point that one of my teachers, Rabbi Jeffrey Schisler, for teaching me what is right and what is wrong over 30 years ago now, and allows me to say, yeah, actually that tune is not really for this point in time, and do you step in and say so? Or for example, as we are at the moment in Sphira, do we do the special Lecha Dodi for Sphira? And if somebody else in the congregation says, I've never heard that tune, it's a load of rubbish, where's the usual one? What do you do? And what is your response at that point? And I'm going to ask that question to Yehuda. Yehuda, do you I suspect that you are something of a traditionalist. I've read your book, and I would support you in much of that. But let's say, you want to make sure that you do the right thing at the right time. It's not quite Messiah melody, but actually it's correct for the occasion. And somebody comes up to you and says, what on earth was that? What's your response?
Well, I'll explain to them, but as far as the Lechodadi for Safira and the different yigdals, they are not done in Manchester. Manchester has one yigdal for Shlosh Regalim, and I've never heard the Lechot Dodi done in here. I learned in Jews College, but the Lechot Dodi for Sphira I've never heard done in Manchester. So I did do it once because we're in the pandemic and people can't sing with me either way. So I thought 1 week I'm going to do it just up to Lo Shavoshi. But generally I have, because of the pandemic, I've made use of it, and I've actually introduced about 8 to 10 different Lechot Dodis, and hopefully they'll take off once people can join in with me. But many a time I sing Chazonis and people say, what is that on earth is that for? And that's one of the reasons that led me to write my book, explaining why, when to sing a B'choch Mutzer, when to sing an Avosolom, when to sing an Emes V'Emuna, give the reasons and explain that. One time in my shul, before I started davening on Friday night, I would explain what I was singing and give the reason why. And likewise on Shabbos before Musaf, there's a reason why I would sing Mishaberach. Tazri Matzorah, I sang Mishaberach. Why? Why should you sing Tazri Matzorah and Mishaberach? Because in the month of Iyar is a month of refuah, as we say, Ani Hashem Rafa'echo. You're praying for the welfare of the congregation. They should be well. We're getting good news now of the pandemic improving, and therefore it's a Mazel Tov month as far as refuah is concerned, as far as the healing is concerned, and therefore why not sing a Mishaberach? Last week I sang Zarech HaVekayama again because it talks about the well-being, and it's good to pray for people's health in the month of Iyar. So I never just sing at random. Every single time I sing, I look at my siddur, ask what relevance does it have for this week, or to the current news, to the Sedra, make a connection. And one of my Balabatim guesses each week why I picked out a certain piece, and that gives me great pleasure.
And I'm sure it would give me great pleasure as well. I can absolutely hear many chazonim saying they do the same. But I want to ask you, do you explain what you're doing to the Kehillah each week? Because you're obviously passionate about it. Do you give them the opportunity to understand that?
No, I don't anymore. I used to, but I don't do it anymore. But people have got used to my style now and understand if I'm only singing one piece, there must be a reason. And some people understand, others don't. But as I say, I don't explain it to them anymore now, because I've only got 2 hours now. I just don't have the time.
Asher, if you, as I'm sure you do, if you sing a particular piece which is appropriate to that particular occasion, and it may be unfamiliar to the congregation, do you explain what's going on?
When do I explain it? In the middle of a davening?
Perhaps at an appropriate point in the davening, perhaps in a newsletter beforehand, or perhaps in the Kiddush afterwards, if those of us can remember what the Kiddush used to look like.
No. But each congregation is different. Each crowd is different. Maybe there are in the crowd people who can explain to me too. It depends where you are. But I want to tell you something very personal. By the way, one thing that Carlebach did do and communal did do is that people at least don't talk so much during the service. If they sing, they don't talk. And if you make it interesting, there's no bad class, there's a bad teacher. If the class doesn't behave, the teacher has to find out why something is wrong with him. The same thing with the Cantor or with the Chazan or with Baal Tefillah. If you hear that the people are restless, then you are, I don't say you are good or bad, but you are not doing the job. Find out how to do it properly so that the people are with you. Now, I want to tell you something personally. I like classical music, but especially Schubert's Lieder, because Schubert's Lieder, they told me, amongst the things is, you don't have to be a Pavarotti, you don't have to shout, you can do it softly and really, really do it very artistically. And that's when people listen. When they shout, they don't hear you. And I go to his different song cycles, and I went to one of the song cycles, Winterreise, and the last song there, the first time I heard it, I was mesmerized. It doesn't happen often that music does it to me. I mean, you enjoy it, but I had goosebumps, and that was the Lyreman, the last song. And I said to myself, I must do something with it in the service. But it's difficult. Why? Because it repeats itself. Da da dee da dee da 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 dee da dum dee da dee, etc. So I had to find something that you match up. You cannot bring a major scale into a minor place, etc. So number one, you have to match it up. Number two, also the verses have to match it. And thank God I found it. I'll tell you in a minute what it is, the way I do it. And also I found that we Chazonim, when we daven Hallel, we do the same thing, by the way, with Slichus. We put all our efforts in the Ashrei and in the first half. And when it comes to the second half, we are tired and they are tired. So I find that the Hallel, we put a lot of effort in the Bracha and all the parts that are in the beginning and in the middle of the Hallel. And when it comes to the end, it doesn't work like this. You have to also give that part respect. And you can like it, you cannot like it. It's something I'm telling you what I'm doing. It matches and it caught on. Baruch haba b'shem Hashem, berachnuchem bebeit Hashem, twice. Eli ato ve'odeko Elohai v'aromemeko, twice. Yehalelucha Hashem Elokeinu al kol ma'asecha. I'll do it short. Headlines. Baruch haba b'shem Hashem, berachnuchem bebeit Hashem. Baruch haba b'shem Hashem, berachnuchem bebeit Hashem, etc. Eli ata ve'odeka, Schubert, Chabad. And then we come to the Yehalelucha. Yehalelucha, Hashem Elokeinu, al kol maaseh. And soon you can hear a pin drop, and people come to me, what was it? Somebody comes to me and says, you shoved Schubert into your service? I said, yes, if it's a beautiful melody, why not? And those people who don't know and they may not accept it, I say it's a very old moshe, it's nidun, and they say wonderful, wonderful, and everybody's happy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Alex, you wanted to come in?
Beautiful, thank you, Asher. Absolutely beautiful. I think we can teach new tunes and make it popular, and congregations could understand and learn them. If maybe, because they all have websites, they all have cameras, and they all can do video, and if the cousin actually wants to introduce a new tune, maybe for a month's time, or for a Rosh Chodesh or something like that, sing it on the website. Maybe the rabbi can join in and explain about the tefillah, so you get an understanding where the prayer comes from. And then you get a new tune, which you can learn over 3 or 4 weeks for when the chazan does it in situ. And that's how you can probably introduce new tunes. Or maybe you can do, there's a thing that the Cantor's Assembly do called song swap, which is quite, because people interact between each other and introduce new tunes. I mean, they've also done it over the county of the Sephira. They've actually introduced, I think, a different tune for the Chadoti every day during the Sephira, and as they're counting the Sephira, they introduce another tune for the Chadoti and another tune. It's amazing. There's 20 odd tunes now for the Chadoti that some of you might not know, but it could be interesting to introduce these things so you don't become stale. You're with it. You can come to the new composers that are about can produce some beautiful music. You know, there's lovely stuff from Debbie Friedman, and everybody does the Havdalah. I wonder what they did before Debbie Friedman's Havdalah. And most people don't even know it's Debbie Friedman, but that seems to be the norm. and I think it's a Hasidic nigun, and they sing it. So that took over from the Carlebach one. So Debbie Friedman's music is now within the Orthodox synagogues as a Hasidic tune, and composed by a Reformed Cantor, which is absolutely incredible. But there's ways and means of doing it, and it's not too difficult if you want to do it, to introduce and to make your congregants understand. So simple. Try it.
Thank you, Alex. Michael.
No, I think it's great to offer classes, obviously, and I think that get a limited attendance of the people you can probably figure out. If you tell them you're going to offer a class, it's going to teach you how to daven or teach you about the music of the synagogue. I think it's important to see the service itself as a learning experience, a learning opportunity. It's when we have the largest number of people participating and realizing that the music and the liturgy is not something that you just rush through, that's part of the learning experience as well. You're not just rushing through that to get to the sermon, as much as I like giving sermons. I'll say, for example, I think the service that Russell watched of ours was on Shabbat Shira, and that particular week, when we're supposed to focus on music, I didn't give a formal sermon. Instead, I think I gave 5 divrei tefillah over the course of the service, in which I focused, introducing the prayer we were about to sing. Again, I know I have more flexibility with interruptions than Orthodox congregations tend to, but spoke about the composer, the setting in which it came from, and how it adds to our understanding of the prayer. And I think, based on the response from people, I think they gained a lot from that, from including it as part of the service, recognizing that the service itself is their prime exposure to this music and to the Siddur.
Thank you. I particularly remember that Shabbat Shira, which of course I did look in after Shabbat on, and I actually learned quite a few things myself that I didn't know from that. Thank you very much for that. There's a question from Morris Minsky to you, Michael, which is, how does the progressive, reform and liberal shuls bring in traditional nusach and modern in their shuls?
Well, as I said, I'm a rabbi, not a cantor, although I see there are a number of cantors from the JTS Cantorial School here, including Cantor Robert Keval, who I was lucky enough to spend some time working with. And conservative cantors learn traditional nusach. The curriculum is based heavily on altar and on kachko, but certainly bringing in other traditional cantors as well, so that conservative cantors come out with a strong foundation in nusach. Now, it does not, they tend not to sound like, it doesn't sound like the nusach used by cantors of previous generations. I'll say, I think my father, Cantor Wolk, who gave me my foundation in nusach, is on here also, and it certainly sounds very different than the way he davened, because they're different generations of people, but the music is still there.
And my experience is that it's the same nusach wherever you go in the world, almost whatever shul you are davening in, whatever stripe, as it were, it was. Thank you very much for that. I can see that Cantor Benny Meissner, who is, some of you may know, in Toronto, is interested to participate. Benny, I don't know if you can hear us and unmute yourself, but if that is possible, do you have a contribution that you wanted to make?
When I wrote you the little note, was not for today, because I have a lot to say. Ask Robert Keval, he knows that I speak a lot. This is a very complicated subject. I agree with Yossi before, who said that Carlebach is popular because it is based on the American folk song ABA, so it's theme A and theme B, like Mitch, one of the great folk singers. I can only tell you down the road, if it comes to it, my Jews in Toronto, don't quote me, didn't know that they're not reformed, because from a highly sophisticated choral synagogue, I would always prefer a little nigun of Carlebach than Shamru to Erev Shanim, or some of the other piyutim which are just trivialized, to take a little secunda melody and introduce it at Le'el Orech Din, and then continue with Moshe Genshov, or doing nusach for Tal, and when you sing Glanz's Tal in a Reform synagogue, it's not common. I have a lot to say about it. I just think that it is very important to keep nusach at the very beginning of each piece and the very end of each piece in a chatima, hakol b'tzimtzum. I can talk about it much in greater length, because from a Polish little shtibel, through Ravitz, through Glanz, through Israel Alter, through Moshe Genshov, I came to the conclusion that my experience of congregational singing was in Bnei Akiva. And I was a Bnei Akiva boy, everybody sang together. And if you know Amalia Kedem in the music library in Jerusalem, I had interviewed with her and I spoke with all these experiences and living at the feet of Leib Glanz for 10 years, having my uncle of Israel Alter and Moshe Genshov, my mentor, the singing along. In fact, I'll finish one without, I didn't plan this little contribution that you asked me to do. Besides the compositions of Zilbert's Kadosh Hata, or Meir Finkelstein's Natan Tokef, which my people sing along with me, I even have them daven with me, the first 10 years, they didn't know what it's all about. Or when I do HaMelech, because in the Reform Synagogue, a Cantor does not only the whole service twice, but it's Shacharit and whatever the rest of the service is. So the not compromising the sophisticated art of choral art music. By the way, my dear friend Isidora Abramovich, who is the cantor of the Fastalutzi Synagogue in Berlin, you go to the service and everybody sings Lewandowski from the beginning to the end as a congregational tune. So you never compromise your standards when it comes to, at least I didn't, with a sophisticated and elaborate choral tradition, from Solomon Rossi, Hashkivenu on Yom Kippur evening, to Ufosar Sukat Shlomecha in Sinai, and so on and so forth. But I hope I'll have another opportunity to bring some examples which are recorded and offer it to the. These sessions, by the way, are incredible. I didn't want to talk today, but ask Kival, he knows that I'd like to talk a lot. So when you gave me the opportunity, I commend all of you who participated, and the silent participants too. Because you go to a concert, some of the participation is in silence. You don't sing La Don with a tenor. And so participation can be like passive too. And Asher's Baruch Haba is beautiful, but we used to bring the little children up at that time, so I have a march by Jacobson or Bergson. Baruch Haba b'Shem Hashem v'herachnu chan. And Sol Glick made incredible choral arrangement of Shlomo Carlebach.
Benny, thank you very much. We will definitely invite you to a future Voice of the Cantor. This, incidentally, is a segue for me to do an advert, both for, as Hirsch has put in the chat, in 4 weeks' time, and again in 4 weeks' time, and again in 5 weeks' time. We have a two-parter. The Voice of the Cantor 7 and 7A and B is specifically about the slightly provocative title, Who Needs Nusach? And the second part of that is, in fact, jointly with the Cantors Assembly. Asher, yes.
Just an idea that came to me. One of the future sessions should be that the Chazanim should introduce melodies to different parts that other people can use, and we can learn from each other. So maybe one of the sessions should be devoted to that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that suggestion. Thank you. Cantor Neil Schwartz, I see, has put his hand up. Cantor Neil.
Good Rabbi, and thank you all for being our teachers today. I am sitting here with a certain amount of frustration. I am a well-trained JTS graduate. I've spent 40 plus years doing Nusach in conservative synagogues now for the very first time in my life, serving a Reform temple. And even in my last conservative synagogue, where I offered classes on the structure of prayer, I offered classes on the music of prayer. One reason that I only wound up staying there 4 years is because an MD PhD vice president of the synagogue said to me, "You know too much to be our cantor. We don't care. We just want to sing." They did not want to listen, despite all the training that I gave them. They did not want to listen to anything that they did not already know. They did not want to learn about the structure of the prayers. They did not want to learn about what I was trying to share with them about music. It has nothing to do with this before COVID. They simply didn't want to know. They wanted to sing, whether it was, Eric Mendel's Ahavat Olam, which is the only one that they would ever be happy with, or, in some cases, it was actually the Lewandowski and the Zolzer that survived all those years. But where I am now, Debbie Friedman's stuff she wrote 35 years ago is considered radical, brand new.
Thank you.
That's part of what we're dealing with. And as a JTS graduate who knows his Nusach and has taught Nusach for Hebrew College, I find it very, very frustrating that people simply don't want to know what I can share.
Understand. Thank you. Thank you.
In a contrasting example to the conservative or to the Reform communities, in the yeshivish world of the more Haredi communities, they also just want to sing what they want to sing. The Nusach there, even though their religious practice, they hold on to, but the songs that they stick does not adhere to, often even to the Sinai melodies. They have no differentiation between Yom Tov and Shabbos. They have no differentiation between something which is something where you can insert a tune, where you can't insert a tune. They do like singing all together, and some of them just like going through the service without singing at all. But they also don't really want to be told where and when they should be or shouldn't be singing. But if there's one point that I haven't mentioned thus far about Carlebach and Tefillah, which is something that I found quite difficult myself, which is once I came to the understanding of how to pronounce more accurately, I found a lot of Carlebach tunes, even specifically Friday night, weren't written for the correct dikduk. And dikduk has been dissipated in most communities, and those of us who hold on to how words should be pronounced correctly find it difficult to sing those full Carlebach pieces pronouncing the words accurately. And I don't know if this is just something that I have struggled with, but perhaps many of us have done the same. That has been one of the biggest sacrifices in singing Carlebach tunes. It is getting the congregation singing with the correct pronunciation.
I could provocatively say, which is more important, the congregation singing in the way that they like to, or the correct pronunciation. But I won't answer that question, but I think I will ask Yehuda what his view is on that.
On correct pronunciation, I don't think it's important. I think the neshama is the most important. So Mishnah and Brachos said if a person davened with the wrong pronunciation is a yoitza, and yes, he is. The most important thing in davening is the pronunciation. It's a kavanah, not the pronunciation. We listen to Rosenblatt. Rosenblatt doesn't sing with the correct pronunciation either. It wasn't done in East European Jews. It was never, ever done. The Torah Tamimah says, in the name of his father, the Orach HaShulchan, he said that people who are makpid on the correct pronunciation are never want that daven well. So is the people that aren't interested so much in davening, they worry about the correct pronunciation. When you're davening, you have to think of the words, not so much the pronunciation. Think of the meaning of the words. That's far more important.
Okay, thank you. Well, we're nearly coming up to time, and so I think we're coming to that point where we ought to be summing up what actually has been a very wide-ranging conversation. And I'm going to just go to a couple of our panelists for their thoughts overall on this overall topic. But I again just want to say that we have in the series coming up a special on Nusach and also a special on congregational singing. Alec, what's your overall conclusion from today's discussions?
The overall conclusion is that no matter where you're in the world, whatever community you represent, it's the same problem. It doesn't matter whether you're Reform, Progressive, Masorti, Orthodox, the same problem right across the board. The same answers have been given, that congregational singing is very important. The Sitzfleisch, the understanding of staying into a synagogue for more than an hour and a half is also a problem. But, my suggestion is, let's not have the rabbi sermon in the synagogue, so that takes down 15 or 20 minutes. Let the rabbi give his sermon maybe in the Kiddush, or Mincha or Shalashudas or somewhere else, which then maybe give the opportunity to for the congregants to have more congregational singing, and then you don't have the disruption of somebody, of the rabbi. No disrespect to the Rabbonim, it's just a suggestion that might help with the flow of the singing and the continuity of a service, where a sermon could be said or given somewhere else, which maybe allows people to come to make up a minyan where they would not necessarily have come to make up a minyan to listen to the rabbi speaking. Just a thought.
Michael, a concluding thought, perhaps including whether you would prefer to give your sermon in the Kiddush?
I think Alex should try giving a sermon in Kiddush if we are so lucky to have a Kiddush and see how it goes. I think it's really important to remember that Cantor Hainovitz said it very nicely before. You do have to remember who you're standing in front of, but you also have to remember who's standing behind you. In our case, if we face the congregation who we're looking out towards, your job is to engage them in prayer service, and we have a number of many different tools to do that. Some of them are music that we might call traditional, however we want to define that, and some of it is music that we might call popular, however we define that. We have some differences there, but it's it's engaging them in services that are the most is, I think, the most important job of the cantor.
Thank you very much. Daniel Hirschfield suggests that perhaps the sermon should be sung to a Carlebach tune. Thank you very much for that wit, Daniel. That's appreciated. I'm going to go to Yehuda. Do you have a wrap-up thought from today's discussion?
Yes, I think Carlebach, we have to sing Carlebach today. That's the way things are going. But at the same time, we have to do chazonus. You have to find time for both. And I think a shul needs a rabbi. A rabbi is a shul without a rabbi is a shul without a captain. A shul without a chazan is a shul without a neshama, without a soul. You need both.
Yossi, you are in many respects both at many times in your kehillah. A wrapping thought from you?
I think if we took away the sermon, they'd want an even shorter service. So I don't think that would work. I mean, for our community, I think what's fundamental here is that we get the words into the mouths of those who come to shul and to get everyone singing together. And we have to thank Rabbi Carlebach for really bringing to the mainstream this institution of communal singing. And that is something that will be his legacy. Whether we sing his music or we sing other tunes altogether, it is that we're trying to do.
Cantor Asher Hainovitz, a final thought from you, particularly given the length of service that, of course, that you've given to communities.
length of the service, when I started in Yeshurun the first time, there was a long row of people standing and saying Yashikoyach, and I was so proud of myself. And then somebody came to me and said, they say Yashikoyach because you finished in time. That's the length of the service in our time. Now, look, you have to adapt. You have to adapt to your congregation. On one hand, you have to teach the congregation, whether it's Nusach or whatever, but on the other hand, you have to take into consideration who the people are, what you can do and what you cannot do. And sometimes people want more chazonis, sometimes people want more communal singing, and you have to have the sense of combining these things.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it's been a really interesting discussion. We've gone to quite a number of places. We've gone to congregational singing, we've gone to teaching the congregation tunes, we've looked around the canon of various parts of modern music, and I want to thank everybody for their contributions. I want to thank Rabbi Yossi Binstock, Rabbi Michael Wolk, Cantor Hainovitz, Cantor Yehuda Marx, and Alex Klein. Thank you very much, and thank you to the audience, of course, for tuning in and for all your comments in the chat. And thank you for those that are interested. Yehuda's book, I'll just put that in the chat now, is called In Defense of Chazonis. If you'd like a copy of Yehuda's book, he didn't ask me to publicize this, and he's certainly not paying me for it. But it's a good book. If you'd like that book, then do contact Yehuda for that. I just want to give 2 lines on the next voice of the cantor, which is about the Sephardi cantor. The series to date has primarily considered the cantor as the chief singer of the Ashkenazi synagogue, but Sephardi and Oriental communities have their cantors and leaders too. Their roles and styles are sometimes quite similar to those of the traditional Ashkenazi cantor, but often quite different as well. What are the core similarities and differences? What can cantors and rabbis and communities in the 2 wings of Judaism learn from each other? More specifically, what are Sephardi communities doing to preserve and to communicate their heritage? So our panel in 2 weeks' time, which is in whenever 2 weeks' time is, I can't remember what the date is, but it's 2 weeks today, will include Ashkenazim who serve Sephardi communities and Sephardim who serve Ashkenazi communities for what should be a colourful cross-cultural discussion, and your moderator on that occasion is Daniel Tunkel. So I want to thank everybody, and I'm just going to go over to Hirsch for a final word.
Thank you, Russell. I just like to say thank you to everybody for the very active participation, including the very active listening, which I agree is an important facet. I thought it was extremely interesting. I learned something new this evening, more than one thing, but I'm going to pinch Asher Heinovitz's use of the Der Leiermann, which I absolutely love. So we'll come back to some of this in 4 weeks' time, because of course the Nusach is really at the center of all this. If you missed any part or would like to revisit any of what we've done this evening, there will be a video recording of it on the ECA website. And I hope to see you at the next session, the Sephardi Cantor, How Similar, How Different, in 2 weeks' time. All the best. Good night, everybody.